how much we love Americans, how much we love the U.S. And as I've said on this show many times, that a tariff on Canada is a tax on the American people.
President Trump hit Canada with an increase of 35% tariffs last Friday. But both sides of the border are still negotiating for a mutually beneficial deal. Canadian officials tell me they're expecting trade talks to take a while, saying things are moving slowly.
U.S.-Canada relations are at a breaking point. No more polite diplomacy. No more forced handshakes. In a bombshell interview, Ontario Premier Doug Ford declared, Trump is the most disliked politician in Canada. And he's not exaggerating, because what President Trump is doing doesn't just infuriate Canadians, it's hurting American families, killing American jobs, and isolating America from its closest ally.
The Trump administration has unleashed the highest import tariffs since the Great Depression. Mexico 25%, Canada 35% if they fail to fully comply with USMCA. Other nations like Switzerland, India, Vietnam, China, and more are being hit with 20 to 50% tariffs.
He did say there's one way all countries could get out of a tariff hike in this scenario.
But if you're building in the United States of America, there's no charge.
The result? Skyrocketing prices, shattered supply chains, and global trade chaos.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford didn't hold back. Trump isn't just punishing Canada, he's attacking his closest family member. Ford reminded Americans, Ontario alone supports 9 million U.S. jobs. Canada is a lifeline for U.S. industry, and Trump is severing that line. Over 37,000 Americans have lost jobs since the tariffs hit, and the toll is rising.
He's probably the most disliked politician in the world in Canada because he's attacked his closest family member, and that's the way we look at it.
A tariff on Canada is a tax on the American people, Ford said bluntly. Trump isn't protecting Americans, he's hurting them.
Canada isn't retaliating with bombs, it's walking off the battlefield. Instead of tit-for-tat tariffs, Canada is diversifying, decoupling, and defending itself. Trade with the EU is up 25%. Exports to the UK have jumped 30%. Ontario alone attracted over $40 billion in new investments. Canada is reshoring manufacturing that used to rely on American supply chains. Ford made it clear, we will outlast the Trump administration, and we will never bow. CNN reports confirm the damage. Prices on electronics, toys, alcohol, clothing, shoes, watches, and steel have all surged. Families are paying 20, 30, even 50% more for everyday goods. American manufacturing is shrinking. Businesses are relocating to avoid tariffs.
President Trump says he will impose a 100% tariff on computer chips sometime soon, but he didn't give an exact timeline. But that could impact prices on electronics, cars, and appliances.
The latest estimate from the Yale Budget Lab, the average American family will lose $2,400 a year if these tariffs stay in place. So much for bringing jobs home. The truth is, factories are shutting down. Workers are being laid off. Families can't pay rent or mortgages. Ford didn't mince words. Trump isn't defending American workers, he's gutting them. For decades, Canada has stood by the United States as a loyal ally, as a trade partner, as a trusted friend. But under Trump, that friendship is under siege, not just because of tariffs, but because of arrogance, betrayal, and reckless ego. Doug Ford spoke for millions of Canadians when he said, "We love Americans, but no one loves a friend who puts their hands around your neck and calls it loyalty." If Trump keeps down this path, he won't just lose a partner. He'll lose the last shred of trust the world still has in America. He's not building American strength. He's burning bridges and burying American jobs with them.
The first time that it went through, it had 35 Indigenous partners who were equity owners in that, and that has to be the starting point for any new project. There has to be meaningful engagement and meaningful economic involvement of nations.
We now have a situation where there's a 50% tariff. We're the biggest steel export market for the United States.
Right.
We have a 25% tariff. There's a 50% tariff when we want to sell something into the United States. So
when Trump announced a 35% tariff on Canadian goods unless a new deal was reached, Ottawa had no real response. No defense, no clear stance, just delay after delay in desperate trade talks. And that's when Alberta moved. They didn't wait. They didn't ask for permission. They signed and launched a multi-billion-dollar oil pipeline deal with the U.S. No federal approval, no consultation. Premier Danielle Smith made it clear, we're done asking. We act now, for our people, for our future.
It should give us pause that we, in Eastern Canada, are overly reliant on oil that either has to come by way of the United States or has to be shipped in from overseas.
A new mega pipeline, capable of transporting 800,000 to 1 million barrels per day, is now underway. For many, it's more than a project. It's Alberta's declaration of economic independence. Alberta has lost over $17 billion annually due to canceled projects like Keystone XL, Northern Gateway, and Tech Frontier, most blocked or neglected by Ottawa. In the past decade, over $250 billion has been siphoned from Alberta's economy to fund Ottawa's equalization programs.
You can't beat up on the economy that is the driver of the entire economic engine of the country and expect that you're still going to be able to meet all of your promises.
Despite making up only 11% of Canada's population, Alberta contributes 14% of the national GDP. Yet when Alberta needed support to export its oil, Ottawa looked the other way. This pipeline won't follow the traditional route into the U.S. Instead, it heads west to Prince Rupert or Kitimat, where oil will be shipped directly to Asia and Europe. And the best part? No federal approval needed. The project is a private venture with international partners from the U.S., Japan, and South Korea. No legal bottlenecks, no political delays. Alberta has already built the logistics backbone: railways, trucking systems, compression stations, port terminals, and digital infrastructure, all operated independently of Ottawa. This isn't a protest, it's execution. This time, Alberta has committed $3 billion in equity shares to Indigenous communities. They're not just included for optics, they have profit-sharing rights, voting power, board representation, and environmental oversight.
When we do polling, we find that well over 70% in most jurisdictions support the idea of us supporting each other and building energy infrastructure. And so that's what we're going to work towards.
This is real participation, not a token gesture. And for the first time, many Indigenous leaders feel this is a deal that respects their sovereignty too. Alberta has formed strategic partnerships directly with U.S. states and other provinces. With Montana and Idaho, energy infrastructure and technology exchange. With Ontario, synchronizing heavy industry supply chains. With Japan and South Korea, securing long-term energy contracts. Meanwhile, Ottawa is still hosting reconciliation summits and publishing unread climate policy reports. Alberta, in contrast, is building, trading, winning. Alberta is no longer just a resource province, they're a self-sustaining economy within a broken federation. This pipeline isn't just infrastructure, it's a message. A message that says, if Ottawa won't help, at least don't stand in the way. Because Alberta isn't waiting anymore. They're not rebelling, they're redefining their future. And they end with a bold warning to the federal government. Alberta's just getting started, and Ottawa better keep up or get left behind.
Do you think Mr. Carney understands Quebec?
I think he does not give a damn.
Canada's strong. We can give ourselves far more than anyone can take away. We're building this great country. I just met with the Premier.
Canada is facing the most serious federal crisis in decades, with Quebec now openly declaring it is exploring a sovereignty referendum, and Alberta charging ahead with plans for a 2026 separation vote. The very foundation of the nation is cracking.
Albertans could vote on leaving Canada as soon as 2026. That is the update from Premier Danielle Smith after she met with Prime Minister Mark Carney and after hundreds rallied for Alberta independence.
This is no longer about scattered voices of discontent. It is structured, organized, and planned. While Ottawa remains paralyzed in vague promises and recycled slogans, two of Canada's most powerful provinces are quietly drafting their exits. Premier François Legault has dropped all pretense. He publicly declared that Quebec is now actively considering holding a new referendum on sovereignty. This isn't just political posturing, it's a parting speech dressed as a press conference. Years of feeling sidelined culturally, linguistically, and economically have boiled over into a concrete path towards separation. Quebec asked Ottawa to reduce the number of temporary immigrants by 50%. The federal government never responded.
Of course, we would like to have a part of that.
Legault wants Canada to renegotiate the free trade agreement with the United States. Opposition parties are calling on the Premier to protect Quebec's interests.
Tensions flared when Prime Minister Mark Carney hinted he may support a Supreme Court challenge against Bill 96, Quebec's law protecting the French language. Legault slammed him publicly, declaring that Carney doesn't care about Quebec. Quebec sees this as an attack on its core identity, and it's fighting back. Premier Danielle Smith has already prepared the legal groundwork for Alberta's separation. The threshold for a referendum petition has been drastically lowered to 177,000 signatures. The vote is planned for 2026.
None of us knows what the future holds should Ottawa, for whatever reason, continue to attack our province, as they have done over the last decade.
Alberta passed the Sovereignty Act, along with the DIY guide for breaking up with Canada, timelines, legislation, procedural frameworks. In Alberta, 65% of UCP voters now support independence. In Quebec, sovereignty support has surged from below 30% to nearly 40% in just weeks. On social media, discussions about joining the U.S. as the 51st or 52nd state are growing. Even if half-joking, it shows a profound collapse in faith in Ottawa.
Mark Carney is being criticized for barely mentioning Quebec's key industries, aerospace, forestry, and fisheries. After Quebec helped the Liberal Party gain seats in 2021, it now feels completely ignored. Carney's reaction? Ambiguous statements and soft gestures, described by critics as a sleep-deprived intern drafting farewell speeches at midnight. No commitment, no firm response, just delay. When two of your largest provinces begin drafting divorce papers while the federal government clings to old slogans and vague hopes, the dream of a unified Canada is quickly slipping away. Quebec and Alberta are no longer mere rebels. They are now organized political machines with real public support and structured exit plans. If Ottawa doesn't wake up, if it doesn't take real, concrete action instead of reciting hollow lines, then Canada may soon be nothing more than the lonely name of a capital city, isolated on a map that is quietly being redrawn.
What if we don't get a deal with Trump by Friday? What else might Trump do if we don't reach a deal? Might he add additional tariffs to other sectors and other industries?
That's what prompted him saying, well, then you're not a real country. You're a 51st state. So now we have to act like a real country. And a real country can defend itself.
This is an insult, one furious premier declared after hearing the news of the latest US-EU trade agreement. Saskatchewan, Alberta, Ontario, once restrained in their criticism, are now united in frustration. They are no longer waiting for Ottawa's explanations. They want answers. They want action. They want to know, how did Canada, America's largest trading partner, get sidelined and treated like a second-tier country?
I got a problem with one person, and that's Donald Trump down there.
The premiers are no longer hiding their disappointment. They now openly criticize the federal government for being soft, slow, and completely reactive. Some are even questioning whether Ottawa still has the capacity to defend provincial interests on the global stage. As Canadian provinces struggle to rebuild from economic disruption, the U.S. has already sealed trade deals with Japan and the European Union. Both of those agreements include a 15% tariff rate on key sectors like automobiles, steel, and electronics, a major reduction compared to earlier terms.
Unfortunately, the sad reality is that tariffs mean the economy is going to work less efficiently. It means there's going to be less income. So there's going to be less consumption.
But Canada, still stuck in limbo, still facing threats of steep new tariffs. President Trump has made it clear, either Canada accepts the deal on my terms, or there will be no deal at all. And if there's no deal, Canada will pay the price. Back in Ottawa, the federal cabinet scrambles behind closed doors. But instead of solutions, they're asking each other questions. What if we don't get a deal? What will Trump do next? Will there be another round of tariffs? The optimism that once surrounded these talks has evaporated. Senior ministers now admit the U.S. isn't negotiating, they're dictating.
The Canadian delegation returns to Washington next week, even as there's little hope right now.
The country now faces an impossible choice: accept a humiliating trade deal or prepare for a full-scale economic assault from Washington. Trump is using his recent diplomatic wins, deals with Japan and the EU, as leverage against Canada. He's parading these victories to the world, saying, "I'm getting the job done, Canada's next." Even though Canada is the United States' single largest trading partner, it's being treated like an outsider. Now Trump wants Canada to accept the same flat 15% tariff template, regardless of previous treaties like USMCA.
U.S. President Donald Trump says most trade deals will be finished by August 1st. But as for us,
we haven't really had a lot of luck with Canada. I think Canada could be one where they'll just pay tariffs, not really a negotiation.
And if Canada refuses, tariffs could hit Canadian oil, autos, aluminum, lumber, and agriculture, crippling industries across the West and Heartland provinces. With tensions at a breaking point, all eyes turn to one final possibility: a direct call between Canada's Prime Minister and President Trump. Some insiders believe Trump still respects Mark Carney, Canada's lead negotiator, but that respect doesn't necessarily extend to the Prime Minister.
If this conversation fails, Canada could be thrown into a trade war it never wanted and never prepared for. And the damage wouldn't be limited to the government. It would strike workers, businesses, and families across the country.
Canada's premiers are livid, its people are worried, its leaders are scrambling. Meanwhile, the United States, once an ally, has become an enforcer, dictating Canada's future with every tariff threat. The question is no longer, how do we reach a deal? It's now, is Canada still a sovereign nation or just a dependent satellite orbiting Washington's will? One wrong move, one failed call, and the very idea of Canadian independence could slip into the past, remembered only as something we used to have.